We're going to get that BBC screen.
We're live.
That was a good start,
I
wasn't
know. Excellent. Hi guys, welcome to our 19th live YouTube video.
You're supposed to make more noise at
Yeah,
that point.
19th.
So then we can say, you can tell we've got a live audience. There you go.
So we've got a live audience tonight, and welcome to our subscribers who've joined us in the audience, and our subscribers at home, as well as anyone else who's. Now I turn that volume down over there.
We don't need to hear ourselves in stereo, thank you, Anne.
Sorry, we just got a little bit of a distraction there. Sorry, so yeah, welcome everyone who's joined us tonight. We've got a live audience, like we've mentioned about 4 times already, and in the live audience,
Hey!
It's the best one yet.
best one yet. It also includes Lee's wife. So he might still get in trouble tonight, but he won't be in as much trouble as
We
normal.
won't be swearing to that.
Well, all I can say is, Polly, I will try and behave. Try.
I'm sure you've heard that before.
1 out of 19 would be great.
So we've got a pretty strong lineup tonight. So if you haven't already looked at the list, yeah, we're in for a bit of a treat. So if you want to take out the pumpkin out of the fridge now, let it warm up a little bit. We're going to start with something a little bit more sessionable.
By a whole 0.5%.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Little bit of a mix-up in the boxes this month. So if any of you guys have received 2 cans of Imperial Eagle, you're very lucky, because we only had about 100 and something cases of the beer full stop. So we were unfortunately really short on that beer, and we managed to send too many of them out to some of you. So if you were one of the lucky ones who got two cans, ping us an email to store@brewyork.co.uk, and we'll make sure we ship you missing beer next month. Apologies for that, but it's not too bad.
Yeah, but Wayne and I are devastated because they were the 2 boxes we had put to one side for us.
We had a case each, and we had to basically use them to finish the shortfall. So we're a bit gutted, but hopefully you guys at home are going to enjoy it. Yeah, over to you.
Okay, so yeah, we said a little bit about the lineup there. So this is rather big on the ABV this time. So we have pitched this session as the Battle of the Imperials. So we're going to start out with a more traditional West Coast Imperial IPA, and that's coming in at 9%. We're then going to be having a 5% apple and blackberry pie sour called Granny Smith's Brambling Habits, named by Ant, our cameraman over here. We're then going into the second dipper. So the reason it's called the Battle of the Dippers is because we then have a modern interpretation of the dipper, the East Coast dipper, which is called the DIPA'rted. And it's called the DIPA'rted because it was made by a guy who has recently left our team. So more on that later. And then we're going to finish on another over 9% beer. We're going to be finishing on a beer that was actually brewed in collaboration with a brewery in Durham called S43, and it's called Pumpkin Imperial. We brewed a beer with them about this time last year, which was around a 5%-ish pumpkin spiced beer. And they liked it so much, and we liked it so much, we got together again and we brewed it this year, but at twice the previous strength, or near enough twice the previous strength. So yeah, we're going 9, 9, 5, 9.5. I feel like we should apologise now. This is going to be interesting. And we feel like we put a really strong box together for you again this month, because in addition to that, you've got Nothing Else Matters and the DIPA'rted. And it was a very close call as to whether the DIPA'rted would have made this tasting session. Very unusual beer. It's a white stout. So it has the appearance of a pale beer, but is designed to taste like a stout. In particular, we've gone for the characteristics of a white Russian, hence the DIPA'rted, like the dude from the Big Lebowski. So hopefully you'll enjoy that as well when you come to have that from your box. So as we always say at this time, this session is only as good as the interaction. So you need to get your questions in. So we have an audience here. They'll put their hands up and they're going to shout questions out. Myself and Wayne will then repeat them and do our best to answer those questions. And for you at home, you are able to send questions in by just commenting below this video. Ant and Andy over here will then record those questions and they'll pass them in to myself and Wayne. And again, we'll do our best to answer those. So as I've said, the more you can contribute, the more you can ask, the more interesting this will be for you, and the more interesting it's going to be for us, if we're honest. So as we go along, we are going to be sampling the different beers. We'll tell you about the concept of the beer. We'll tell you about why we've called it what we've called it. We'll talk about the recipe for each of those. And at the end of each tasting session, we'll then go into a specialist subject covering such things as what you might be able to expect in the box next time. And we're starting to look towards next year, and we've got a bit of an update for you on what you can expect by way of the subscription service next year. Okay, so into the first beer. And it's still me to talk, so I can't...
Lee's done the running order. I'm just looking, it says Lee. So I'll just sit here in silence for a bit.
Well, ordinarily, for the first beer, it would be Wayne to talk, but this beer is my baby. I brewed this one as a strong interpretation of Big Eagle, and we brewed it to enter in a competition called the Alpha King Challenge. So the Alpha King Challenge is something that they've had in the US for a very long time. It's organised by a selection of breweries and is sponsored by our hop provider, Yakima Chief Hops. And for the first time this year, they created a European version, and it was held down at Anspach and Hobday down in London. So we brewed this beer for it, and we allowed ourselves lots of time, and then our canning line went down. And then we got an extension to be able to submit the beer, and then our canning line went down again. So we never got to submit this beer to the competition, which I'm truly gutted about, because I think it would have done really well in the competition. And some of the things that did place really highly in the competition were very similar kinds of beers. The only rule to that competition was it must be over 60 IBUs, International Bittering Units, in terms of bitterness. So it has to be quite bitter. So it cannot be the softer type of style like we're going to have with the DIPA'rted, the third dipper that we're going to have today. So yeah, a little bit of a disappointment when we didn't get it into the competition, but we think what we've created here is a fantastic interpretation of this style. It's the kind of thing that many years ago, before we did this, Wayne and I would have drank a beer called Torpedo by Sierra Nevada, which was their kind of stronger pale, which had a good strong malty backbone with the type of crystal caramelly malts that we've got in this one. So this is kind of our nod to Torpedo, and I don't feel like we've done too bad a job with this one.
It's like Lee said, it's that type of style we like, high bitterness, malty backbone still though. So you've got you can see the colour on it. So I've got my session beer hidden off camera is a more modern style. So this is an as of yet released beer, which you guys will get in your boxes next month. And if you come and speak to us afterwards, we might have some sneaky samples. Sorry, at home you probably won't get those sneaky samples. You can see it's a very different style to what we're drinking here. You can see the haze and the light colour. The biggest difference is the malt that we put into this beer. So we've got a lot more. Lee mentioned crystal malt, so they've been kilned longer, so it releases some of the sugar, which crystallizes and turns to like caramel. So you get that flavour coming through in the beer, which then complements the bitter hops, the style of hops that we use in this. So you're more, I guess, piney West Coast style hops. So hopefully you like it.
And it's been hopped with some of the classic hops that's typical for this style. So you would have Columbus and Centennial and Simcoe, but then we put a slightly more modern one in called Equinox. Used to be called Equinox, but they had to change its name because it turns out there's a brewery called Equinox, and they didn't like the fact that there was a hop with a similar name, so it's now called Equinox. In the same way that there used to be a hop in Australia that had a different name. It's now called Ella. If I say it sounded similar before, but there was a particular type of beer that took offence to this hop being called something, what do you think it would be? Stella, yes. So that hop used to be called Stella. It is now called Ella because the macro guys took offence and sent their lawyers after them. Oh, indeed. Okay. So that's our first beer, and the first subject we have, and we're kind of changing the running order a little bit for the YouTube sessions this time. So we're going to have a couple of new regular features. So the first new regular feature is myself and Wayne looking back at what's been our highlights since the last YouTube session. So what has been the things that have kind of meant the most to us in the last month, or made the biggest impact in terms of either a beer that we've drunk, a beer that we've released, or something that's changed in terms of Brew York. So I'm going to start out with something that has changed quite dramatically for us in the last week. We got a new canning line delivered yesterday. And it is the first of two that we are getting. So we're going to have two identical lines that are going to run in parallel. There's many advantages to doing that. First of all, we're going to get a lot more throughput, gives us a lot more flexibility, and we're getting a very special type of canning line. It's called a counter pressure canning line. It means it operates in the same way as a bottling line would, and without getting into too much of the technicalities, basically what it means is for the type of line that it is the lowest level of oxygen pickup on the market. So it means the quality of our beer in cans was already good, but now it's going to get even better. So your beer's going to be fresher from the first instance, and it's going to stay fresher because of this canning line that we're getting. And one thing that we're really excited about is because it does this counter pressure technology, it means we are going to be able to nitrogenate some of our beers and keep the nitrogen in suspension in the beer. So nitrogenation, you're perhaps not familiar with, it's what you have in Guinness. So Guinness partly has that creamy-like character because it has nitrogen bubbles dissolved within it. And nitrogen bubbles are really, really small, and when they roll across your tongue, they feel like cream. So that's how they make Guinness feel as creamy as they do. So we are known for our stouts. So we think taking those and elevating them through nitrogenation and getting some of that into can and getting that out to you is going to be an epic thing to do. And it really was a big influencer in us deciding which type of canning line to go with next. So there you go. What would you say your highlight is of being? I've got one more, but if you want to chip in with one.
My highlight was my upskilling this month of learning how our previous canning line or current canning line works and managing to get it running to get our advent boxes and subs boxes out this month. It was down for pretty much 2 weeks. It was so frustrating for us because we only had one beer left to can before we could ship our advent boxes, which is the Barrel Aged Nightmare, which happens to be one of the most expensive beers in the box. So you don't want your canning line to be faulty at that point. So yeah, after lots of backing and forth, we finally got the machine up and running. And on a Sunday, not too long back, Halloween, we got the final batch canned. And then that meant we got to ship the advent calendar pre-orders, which was such a relief because there's been so much work went into that box, and it's been lots of effort from the wider team, and it was just great to start seeing them shipping, which meant that, as you guys at home and in the audience have probably realised, your subs boxes unfortunately came out a little bit later than they normally do because one, we knew the live tasting wasn't until today, and two, we had so much work to catch up on to get the advent calendars out that we got those out the door and then started on the subs boxes. And so apologies for the slight delay about that. We've looked ahead on days we're shipping in the future and for the subs boxes, and as much as possible we'll try and get them out in the first week of the month. And if we aren't going to be able to do that for whatever reason, we'll let you guys know. So hopefully it hasn't had too much of an impact.
And that's a couple of times we've mentioned issues with our existing canning line. So I hope whoever we're going to try and sell that to is not watching this video.
Yeah. It was. In our aggressive negotiation on our new canning line, one of the things we insisted upon is the service team who look after the new line.
He's trying to dig us out the hole.
Well, yeah, to come and give our current line a once over and basically have it running as smoothly as possible, so that when it moves on to the next company, they get full utilisation out of it.
And another highlight, I would say, of the last month also happened in the last week. One of the best times of the year for me is when we begin to do our annual planning for next year. So we get together as a group and we talk about, well, what beers really worked this year that we'd like to see again next year, and what are the things that we've not done before that we would like to do next year. So that's a really exciting day when we get to do that. And later on, myself and Wayne will be sharing a couple of things for that in terms of a couple of beers that you can expect to see again next year, which we hope you'll be delighted about. And a couple of beers that are going to be new next year that we're also excited about. We're not going to tell you all of it, because that wouldn't be very exciting for you next year, would it? But we'll give you a couple of little snippets of what you might be able to expect next year.
And then we went on to look at breweries who ideally we'd like to collab with next year, so we can start the ball rolling on getting those lined up. And it was just such a strange coincidence that on the Wednesday afternoon we sat and had this meeting, and one of the breweries high up in our list probably won't come as too much of a surprise because we talk about them on pretty much every live tasting of what one of our favourite cask beers are. So I came out for a beer on Wednesday night and I sat in the tap room, and I went across to say hello to a couple of our big customers who happened to be in the bar, our trade customers. Said to me, "Oh, Wayne, have you ever met these guys?" And they introduced me to Simon and I want to say Jay. But it's
I
not
wasn't
Jay,
there.
It's not Jay.
I can't think
who
of
were
that.
the founders of Thornbridge, who happened to be in our tap room on Wednesday night. So it was just such a coincidence that I was, hi guys, and then had a good chat with them, and they really like what we've been doing, and yeah, we've agreed to do a collab early next year. So,
Yeah, so we're never the opportunists. For us. Your men's, can we collab next year?
so
All like water.
well,
So
exactly.
that one is nailed on. We have a few other things nailed on, but like I said earlier, we can't let all of the surprises out the bag just yet. So yeah, Thornbridge we've got lined up. We've got some really big names lined up for next year, and some others that we're hoping to ask, and we hope they say yes.
So at this point, we haven't finished as much of the beer as we normally would have, given it's a 9% beer and we're starting on it. But this is about the time we normally go out to questions. So I think the little hand's coming in. The little hand of waters.
Yeah, the not so little hand of waters. Right, one for you.
Oh God, is this waters is writing as well?
Right, I'll go first. Any plans for a triple eagle from Rick Boyer? Wow. What, like a 12% version of this? Yeah, why not? What have you got? Are you struggling to read the writing?
Michael have to shout out for me. I think it's yours. It's about.
It's yours.
For after the first dipper, which is what we just heard.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
The question is.
Yeah.
I thought it's a weird way to start a question. I was like,
UK breweries are matching USA now for dippers. Is that technique, hops, or technology? It's a whole combination of things. So I think we are maturing as an industry in the UK. So I think before we didn't have the expertise, we didn't have the technology, we didn't have the access to the quality of raw ingredient that you would have in the US, especially when you think about the distance they would have to ship these raw materials compared to the distance we would have to ship them to use them. So I think at the start of the kind of craft beer movement, probably 7 years ago in the UK, we were considered to be about 10 years behind the US. And I think optimistically now you could say we're somewhere between sort of 2 and 4 years behind. So we've really closed that gap. Unfortunately, it does still seem like they lead a bit. It's still the UK following. And we've discussed that as a brewery and said, we don't really like that as a position. We feel in the UK that we need to do more to lead. So we're going to be doing a couple of innovation projects, as we're calling them, next year, where we'll try and conceive a few things where we're not just doing what the US has done before us. We're going to try and do our own things. And some of that will work and some of that will not work. But if we could just hit on one thing, 2 things would be epic. That could work, then hopefully we can contribute to the UK beginning to move on and lead and stop being the follower. Cheer coming from the audience there. Because, I mean, if you look historically back, Britain led the world for beer. We were always the leaders. And then through the wars and taxation, and like big brewery buyouts, we massively simplified our offering. And then it was the US where they really reinvigorated the whole scene, and we've been following ever since. But at least in my personal opinion, I think we need to stop following and we need to start doing a little bit of leading. But yeah, so that's my kind of soapbox moment on that. But yeah, I think, yeah, it's not one thing. It is down to techniques. Those of us in the UK have been privileged to work with US brewers and to learn the way in which they do things. And beer around the world, particularly hop-forward beers, continues to evolve. Because despite the fact that we've been brewing for thousands of years, what we understand about hops as a raw material, we're still really quite naive. There's still a hell of a lot that we don't know. There's a hell of a lot of research still going on in that field to try and understand how you get the compounds in the hop to translate into the beer. And it's really weird. Sometimes you can like scientifically analyze a hop and it'll have a lot of this particular type of substance and you're like, well, that's going to be a great hop. But then for some reason it doesn't release it into the beer. So then it's not a great hop. So they're just trying to get their head around now, well, why is that? and how should we be using these hops to try and maximize these flavors. So yeah, and that's one of the things that excites me about beer, that we are always learning. There is always something to learn. Anything to add?
No, I'm just going to go on to a new topic now.
You'll find I do that. I go off on one, but there you go.
But one of the things we didn't mention about this beer was that we actually brewed it here back at the original brewery. So it's quite nice to be able to come down here and do some pet projects, I guess you'd call them. It's like the type of beer that we like to drink, so it's nice to be able to do it on a reasonably on our pilot kit, our 10-barrel pilot kit.
Our 2,000 litre pilot kit. Yeah.
But one of the challenges there is all our equipment now is at the new site, so and all our packaging equipment. So to be able to take a beer like this and can it, we had to then use one of our transport tanks. So we have these 1,000 litre tanks. They're giant key kegs. So if anyone in the trade knows what a key keg is, it's like a giant plastic keg with or not giant. It's a normal sized plastic keg with a foil bag inside. So it's like bagging a keg, and that's what our transport tanks are. They're these giant stainless steel tanks with a 1,000 litre one-use bag inside. So it keeps it sterile. You basically no oxygen pickup. We fill it up and we take it up to the new site and package it up there. So they used that many hops in that beer that we pretty much got. It was about 800 litres.
Yeah, we brewed 1,200 litres and we packaged 550.
So it was it certainly wasn't a high yielding beer, but we knew that from the get-go. It was brewed for the Alpha King Challenge, so we knew we weren't going to get a lot of beer out of it. So one of the things that we didn't do, which is unusual for us, is get a complete new design made for it. It looks like we did, but that's down to Ant on the right here, or left on the camera, because Ant designed this can. So this is his design. So if you like it, then congratulate him later. If you don't like it, then give him grief. It was what was.
Well, you're not doing bad tonight, Ant. So you've designed one, and you've named one. Yeah, good going.
On next month's tasting, though, which I'm pretty excited about, we've actually got. We're going to drink a beer. Is it in the tasting? It's in your box if it's not in the tasting. And Andy actually stars on the packaging, so you'll see what we're talking about later. Anyone watching at home, Andy, you'll have seen out at all our events. He's our events manager. He runs all our beer festivals and events, and he used to run the tap room when we first opened. So most of you probably recognise him. So when you see him dressed as Indiana Jones on a can of a beer, he usually dresses as Indiana Jones in the office, which is why we thought it was suitable.
For those of you in the room, we'll pull that image up on the screen here, and you can compare it to Andy. So the guys down at Anspach and Hoptail have done an incredible job in capturing his likeness.
It's a very flattering job. I would agree with you.
I'm not sure flattering is the word for it, but it does look incredibly like Andy dressed up as Indiana Jones. And did you mention the name of the beer?
It's called Indiana Stout and the Last Crusade. It's India Stout, and that was. I'm sure we've already mentioned this before. It was quite on live stream. It's quite a detour for Anspach. They very much named the beers after style. It's called like the Pale Ale or the Cream Ale. So it was really good. They got on board with our pun style.
Took a page out of our book.
Yeah, exactly. And it was, well, they did actually ask us for our advice on what to do if they got sued. So we got them covered there, and then they were happy to use the name. So we got one from Belinda Morley. So have you ever considered aging a beer in new oak barrels?
Well, I guess we have in a way. So we've done some work in the past with a consumer society called SPBW, the Society for the Preservation of Beers in Wood. And they're an older society than CAMRA. So CAMRA's grown to be the bigger organisation, but the one that came first was the SPBW. And they champion for beers that are still served out of wood. So back in the day before we had aluminium and steel, all beer was in wood, and the wood did play a big part in what the ultimate beer became. But that then has fallen away because they're hard to make, they're very hard to clean, they're very hard to keep sterile. So eventually everybody moved over to aluminium and steel. So this society still champions that, and every once in a while we would do a beer to go into wood, and typically that is a virgin oak barrel. And then that gets served in certain specialist pubs who are happy to receive that type of beer. And then there is an annual festival for beers served out of wood. Anything more to add?
No. There's only a couple of. My mind's gone blank on what you call somebody who did.
Cooper.
Cooper, yeah. So there's only a handful of Coopers left in the UK, and there's I think the youngest master Cooper is what brewery is he at? They do the display at Peterborough.
Yes, Theakston's. Yes, thank you.
And it's really interesting. If you ever get a chance to see them make a barrel, it's just fascinating, really. They turn these pieces. Well, if you're here in person, you can see like wooden barrels on our walls. How they turn these pieces of wood into an actual barrel that can hold liquid is crazy. It's really impressive, and it's a great skill that we still have going in the UK, where they have it in a few other countries in the world, but it's just such a nice skill that works in this country. So we talked about, after going to see some of them being made, buying some of the new firkins, the 9-gallon barrels, so that we could do our own beer and wood every now and then and serve it in the tap room. And then we proceeded to get a little bit too drunk at the festival.
Yeah, it was
we
a
forgot to go and buy them.
Peterborough Beer Festival. We negotiated a good deal as well. We got a really good price. They were just making them for this display. They didn't want to have to take them back, so they were selling them off cheaply. We agreed a price, and then we got drunk and forgot to go back.
So yeah, we might have to go as soon as Peterborough Beer Festival's back on again. We might have to go down and see if they'll honour that price from 4 years ago.
But we do know another guy. There's a guy called Alistair Sims. He's the UK's, as far as I'm aware, only master cooper. And he runs White Rose Cooperage. So we have talked about whether we get it from the Theakston guys or we get it from him. We will at some point get some wooden barrels and do some virgin oak aging.
So got one from Ian Hay. He said Golden Eagle was great. Any plans for similar beers, black lagers, etc.? So Golden Eagle is actually now our core lager. So it's a Pilsner that we brought out this year. We haven't had any in stock for a while, but we just packaged it last week. So we finally got it back again, and it's going to be a permanent lineup for us. So you'll see Golden Eagle all the time. It's something we're really proud of, which is why we wanted to make it the core lager in our range. And we are meeting on Wednesday talking about beers for next year. Lagers were on the agenda. We're going to probably do a few small batch lagers, but to have 2 large batch lagers on at the same time, they cannibalize each other's sales for us as a brewery at the moment. But there are breweries out there who specialise in lager, who do such a great job, who have maybe 4 or 5 different lagers available at one point in time. So it kind of works for them. I'm not convinced yet it'd work for us, but if we keep putting out Golden Eagle at the standard I think we've done so far, I think we might get a name for ourselves in that area, and that maybe we'll do more lagers.
Yeah, I mean, I would absolutely concur with what Wayne has said there, where I would like us to do more lagers, but it's a thing we have to be a little bit tentative about. So in the UK, we're only just coming around to embracing this craft lager movement. And there are a few that are doing it really well, like your Don Zocos and your Utopian and your Lost and Grounded. So they're doing it really well, but that's kind of their thing. For us, where this broad waterfront brewery, I think people don't seek us out for lagers. It's nice that we can do a good one, and we have in Golden Eagle a good one as part of our range. But it's sorry.
I'm shaking my head because we decided to not use the obvious door, and Waters walked straight out the obvious door, and all we get here is the background noise of the tap room. So sorry, we got a little bit distracted there. Hopefully you guys probably didn't even hear it at home because of the directional mics, but if we start looking across, it's usually because of something like that.
So to summarise that answer, yes, at some point we will do more lagers. It's not high up on our agenda right now, though.
So we've got one from Stephen Guy. Why do some strong beers taste weaker than they actually are? In general, it's the residual sugar. So residual sugar makes a beer taste a bit sweeter, and the sweetness masks the alcohol sometimes. And the reason you have residual sugar is because the yeast can't fully ferment all that sugar into alcohol. It gets to a stage where the yeast dies because it's done that much work and there's that much alcohol in the beer that it can't keep going, and they won't continue to ferment all sugars. And then sometimes we'll introduce sugars that don't ferment on purpose, so that when the beer has finished, or the yeast has finished its work, the beer has residual sugar because we wanted it there. That tends to be your stouts. When we use lactose in a stout, that's usually why. But yeah, for me, Imperial and double and triple IPAs, they usually are quite easy to drink because of the sugar content in them, which means they're also not great for the waistline. What is this back through the door, if you're wondering?
Yeah, and
The door with the sign saying "Do not use."
we're not exactly an advert for the health benefits of beer, are we?
No. But I ate healthy today. I had noodles for my tea. So yeah. That makes
Yeah,
up for
and
it.
I had cheese toasties for lunch and then duck fries for tea.
We're doing good.
Anyway, I've got a three-part question here from Joe. So, where was the first can you sold's destination? That would be very hard for us to know, I think.
Yeah, when we first canned the beer, it was a contract canning, a mobile canning line came in, and we were doing free 30ml cans at the time, shrink wrap free 30ml cans. And I think the beers we had were Brew York, Little Eagle, Viking DNA, and Maris the Otter. And it was so weird because we were like, why are we canning a best bitter, or our take on a best bitter? But it sold really well, and I can't remember where it went, but it was probably Trembling Madness in York.
You'd have to assume wherever it was local, because we weren't quite the brewery then that we are now. So the second part of the question
And
is,
we didn't ship that. We didn't have an online presence then.
where is
So,
the
yeah.
furthest can you have sent? So my geography's not amazing, but we have sent beer to Japan, we've sent beer to Australia, Hong Kong, Thailand, Singapore. So whichever one of those is the furthest away.
And we took canned beer to America. We didn't sell it, but we took it with us and swapped it for loads of really cool American beers.
How do you get your presence out there then in Australia?
How do we get
So
our
we've got a
presence
question from the
out?
audience. How do we get presence out there in Australia and other places? In general, for most breweries in the UK, it's through Untapped. So if you're an importer from a different country and you haven't been to the country yourself or tried the beers, then you can look at Untapped, see who the best breweries according to that are in that country, and then potentially just blind order the beers, taste them, and hope they're good. Or if you're good at your job and you do your research, you go to that country, you go to beer festivals, you try the beer for yourselves, and then you buy it. So for us, we try to attract importers to come visit us at festivals so they taste our beer, because there's so many new breweries out there now that we're not in the top 50 breweries in the UK according to Untapped. And
Used to be, not anymore.
Northern Monk are number 49, North are number 47. So some of the big name breweries that you think of aren't really in the top 50 according to Untapped anymore, which is
Thornbridge
crazy.
aren't.
Well, Thornbridge
They're
aren't. There's so many breweries on there that aren't in this list. So unless you can either have an existing reputation or you can show people your beer in other ways, it's quite hard to get new export contracts. We've been quite lucky in that we.
There's also been a couple of instances of right place, right time. So we started exporting to Japan because York's a big tourism city, and one of their buyers happened to be holidaying in York, tried our beer, liked it, decided it needed to go to Japan. We got our beer into Hong Kong because there's a guy called Ian, who's now a good friend, who he has a brewery out in Hong Kong. He's originally from York. He returned to York on holiday, spotted that this craft brewery had suddenly appeared in York, came to say hello, and then he started importing our beer into Hong Kong. So some of it is just lucky. But I think, as I've said on this before, I'm a big believer in the harder you work, the luckier you get.
And Untapped is the friend in some respects and the enemy in others. I still can't believe that. Probably one of my favourite beers is Jaipur on cask, and I think it rates something like 3.5 on Untapped, which is ridiculous. It's such a good beer, but that's the way that the system works. People don't. There's no benchmark for the style. It's just literally, I can have a stout, and I love stouts, and I'll rate it a 5. I can have a pale ale, and I hate pale ales, I'll rate it a 1. And that's the way it works, and it goes on averages. So for me, it's a good indication of how good your beer is or how popular your beer is, but it's not the be all and end all. So I've never worried too much about it, but it's always in the back of my mind when opportunities come up like this for export, and you're like, how come we're not in the top 50 anymore? And you think about, because we brew an English bitter, brew a best bitter, or we brew a lager, and lagers and best bitters never score highly, so it brings your average down. So
And
Could you market it more in the bars to raise the profile of the tap so that more customers contribute to the...
yeah, the question was, could we advertise more in the bars to get a higher profile on for getting our scores up and Untapped? And I guess we potentially, well, we used to. So when we were a much smaller brewery that didn't sell us further afield, then you'll notice that most of the top 50 breweries in the UK have about 1,000 check-ins. Most of them are probably in their own tap room, and you always have that really nice. If you're tasting a bit of super fresh, it's probably the best it's going to be, and you're also really supportive because it's a local company. So a beer that maybe would score 3.5 is getting a score of 4.5, and all of a sudden your first 1,000 check-ins. We were in the top, I think, 15 or I don't know, 20 breweries in the UK when we first started, and we had our tap room was where all our check-ins happened. And then as you start selling a bit
we
further
made
afield,
top 10 at one point.
and then as your check-ins increase, you get a realistic view of where your beer is. We weren't the top 10 breweries in the UK. We were doing a good job, but the beer we were making then isn't anywhere near as good as the beer we're making now, and yet we've dropped massively.
Once our mums, partners and wives stopped giving us 5 out of 5 for every beer that we released, then we started to drop down a bit.
Include iPads at beer festivals?
Yeah, exactly. Then just walk around and we'll get the bias.
But I mean, what I was going to say was, after a while, you learn to start ignoring Untapped, but you've kind of made a counter argument to that.
We do.
First time I used Hoptail, I didn't realise it had an effect on the brewery. I just thought it was a way of logging the beer you like, so that when you're drunk and have forgotten what you've had, you go into it and you go, oh, I've had that before. You're like that.
So
And I, to be honest, hands up to it, I slated you guys on a sour because I didn't just like sours. You guys converted me, I now love sours. And I just went,
Go back and change your scores.
Back, why rate us so lowly on a
Right.
beer you don't like?
So
And I was like, well, the brewery saw this.
a comment
It's my
we,
private account.
Right.
Saved on my device. I didn't know there was.
So the guys at home are not going to appreciate everything you just said there. So if I could just kind of briefly summarise that. So we've just had a comment in the room that when using Untapped, they did not realise that, one, that the brewery's going to see it, didn't know that they were rating the brewery. They thought it was just a way of cataloguing the beers that they were consuming. And I think for a lot of people that is the way in which they use it. There is no one way in which to use it. People have different interpretations. I've seen people come up with their own scoring systems. It's like, well, it's already got a scoring. You don't need a scoring system within a scoring system. I mean, what is that about?
And this is what happens when we start on a 9% dip and we start attacking Untapped after the first 30 minutes.
No, I think we should move on, but I'll just finish by saying... Yeah, we do have this little prompt off camera. Next beer, and if that doesn't work, we get the move on.
And this was the...
And I'm going to ignore that by just saying one final thing on Untapped,
Oh, God.
which is, it's the same as any statistics. You just need to ignore the people that think you're amazing, and you ignore the people that think you're shit, and you listen to what's in the middle. The average score does tell you something. It is meaningful feedback. We know if we've made a good beer, we know if we made a bad beer. Okay, so next, moving on.
Rant over for now. We'll pick this up in the next 30 minutes. So one of the things we do quite a lot on this is we jump between beer styles, and when we do, we typically have a sour in between. The sour is a bit of a palate cleanser. So I was quite surprised that did you pick the running order?
But no, I actually went dipper,
Yeah.
sour.
Yeah, that's exactly.
But then when I asked Ant to remind me of the beers in the box, he said, well, the YouTube order is this. So then I went
Right,
dipper,
so-
sour dipper.
Because I was a bit surprised by the order tonight, because the sour does work well as the palate cleanser, but one of the things I kind of wanted us to do is compare the West Coast and the East Coast next to each other, and if we'd have done that, I would have probably started with the East Coast and then gone on to the West Coast. Reason being that a very bitter beer will stop you tasting anything else. So the fact
That's my bad then, because I did pick the,
all right,
his
his favourite.
first.
I picked my favourite
Yeah,
first.
yeah.
But yeah, the West Coast, which we started on, if we hadn't have had this beer in between, you'd have probably tasted the bitterness for every other beer you tasted. So the palate cleanser we've got now is a good way for it to get us back onto to being able to taste again, I guess. Which is, yeah, I won't sidetrack yet. We'll talk about this beer and then I'll sidetrack onto my original encounter with Torpedo from Sierra Nevada. So Granny Smith's Brambling Habit is a return collab. So we did the first collab with a brewery called Unbarred from Bournemouth, who are really, really
Brighton.
cool. Brighton, sorry. I used to live down there as well, and I always middle the two up. So we met Jordan digitally or virtually first before we actually met him in person for the collab.
Yeah, we did the virtual collab, which for most virtual collabs was you talked about a recipe and that was about it, and they brewed it because you couldn't travel because of the pandemic. But for them it was very much we're going to put you on the end of a camera while we're brewing the beer.
So we did a live stream while we're brewing it. And when I say we met them for the first time virtually, I met myself and Lee because Andy off camera and John, our bar operations director, went down to do a festival at their brewery. So we had some of the team had met them and we had the relationship going, but we hadn't met them ourselves. But we knew we loved their beers and we knew we had a lot in common. So the relationship got to a really good start. And then we did this virtual collab with them. And if you didn't get a chance to try it, you've missed out because it was such a good beer. It was a cherry, well, we like cherry sours.
I think it was just called cherry pie. Cherry pie.
Yeah, it was just a really good cherry pie beer. And we decided that if we came back, or when we did the return leg, we wanted to do something similar, but we wanted to use different flavours. So we were talking about the seasonal, and we were talking about lots of different ideas for what fruits would work seasonally. And we ended up settling on the apple and blackberry. So the apple and blackberry crumble.
There's the dipper kicking in.
I know exactly. So what I hadn't realised is that, obviously the new site, our kit's quite big, and we did a beer not too long back called Jackie Flam, where somebody on my right, on left of camera, went a bit overboard on super expensive fruit. So we decided that whatever we did needed to be a bit more accessible.
It was only £8,000. You're never going to forgive me.
Yeah, exactly. On this one, it was a little bit more sensible, but what does that say? 1.2 tonne of fruit.
Yeah, it's the most fruit we've ever put in a beer. This has 800 kilos of apple puree and 400 kilos of blackberry puree in it.
And thankfully, apple's actually quite an affordable fruit.
Blackberry, not so much.
Not so much so. But we've kind of made like a hybrid cider beer. So you put apple in a beer and you're always going to get that reminiscence of a cider. But we actually use yeast. So if you make cider, it's naturally fermented with wild yeast. But for us, we've actually used yeast in this, and we've soured it through kettle souring, which is what we do for most of our sour beers. I say most, we've got about 2 beers we haven't kettle soured. 1.
We've done 3 with a type of, they call it a Philly sour. It's a special kind of yeast. It's a different species of yeast, which first, rather than immediately jumping into producing alcohol, it decides to produce lactic acid first. So it drops the pH, it creates tartness, and then when it's created conditions that it likes, it then decides, you know what, now I'll create some alcohol. So it's a really cool yeast, which has only come about in the last couple of years.
So in addition to the fruit in this beer, so we've done quite a lot of what we call pastry sours, or not just what we call pastry sours, it's just what is a pastry sour. And there's other ingredients in there, so usually lactose, usually vanilla. This beer has cinnamon as well.
Because you can't have apple without cinnamon. It's
you
not in a pie, anyway.
And yeah, when the guys told me what they were brewing, and I was pretty excited about this, and we tasted it fresh from tank. It's really good, and then I thought that beer's great. Oh, we haven't even added the vanilla, and so, brilliant! It's going to get better. So yeah, no, I'm really pleased with this one. It was, I'm sure the brewers will agree. Using apple is something we probably won't do in a hurry again. It caused quite a few issues and challenges to get through, but hopefully you
The
guys
sheer
agree.
quantity is the real challenge. It takes a long time to get that volume of fruit into a tank through a hose that's only that big. That's like a best part of a day's job for a start. But one of the things that's most satisfying when you do a collab like this is when the beer then makes it into the hands of the other brewery, and then you get that kind of unsolicited feedback. And we can be quite brutal with each other. But Jordan contacted me out of the blue and he said, "It's amazing. You've done a really good job with this, guys." And he was like, "Send me the recipe now." So I've sent that recipe through. So hopefully,
take a photo while he was here.
hopefully he'll take that and he'll take it to the next level with whatever he does next.
You have to give him a call and warn him of the post-brew day challenges we had. So Jordan, the head brewer, and is the owner?
Yeah.
Head brewer and owner at Umbard came up for the 2 days for the brew day and then some beers here. And yeah, he saw the smooth part of the process. Going through the brew house, and then once it was in the fermenter and the sugars start kicking in and the yeast and everything goes to work, that's when we had a few of our challenges. We'll share them with him, and hopefully he'll share his challenges with us if he does the same thing, and we'll both learn as breweries. So it's
All is good.
Exactly, it's where collaborations come into their own, and we all help each other out.
So I think. To blow some smoke your way again, and I think you did a cracking job with naming this particular beer.
Did you get a free case of beer? So it's one of the if someone in the well, we'll extend it to anyone watching. So if anyone from the brewery comes up with a name for a beer, they get a free case of the beer once we brew it. So if anyone at home comes up with a really cool name that we end up using, we'll send you a free case of beer. So.
And this is one of those ones where sometimes the name comes first. We can be a bit conceited like that. Sometimes you have a great name and you have to shape a beer around it. But this was very much the beer came first, and then we were really struggling. I think it took us a long time to come up with a name for this beer. And then Ant finally said Granny Smith's Brambling Habit, and we're like, that's it. That has to be it. So then we've got the Zimmer frame, the other things on, and the first iteration of the design had this really stereotypical granny that probably would have got sued on it. They're like, no, you need to do away with that. And
if my parents are tuning in, I told my mum that was named after her, who my surname's Smith. So I told her it was Granny Smith. So sorry, Mum, that was a porcupine. And the Zimmer frame definitely wasn't.
Did you think you were going to get away with that?
No, it was a joke. And yeah, God, she'd have killed me if we'd have put a Zimmer frame on and named it after her.
Although, yeah, she literally would have killed you.
But these are the type of beers that we bring out that are very different to what typically you think of it in beer, and it's the type of stuff where my mum will try it at home and she's like, "Oh my God, that's really different. I really like that," or "Oh my God, it's really different and it's horrible." That's the honest parent feedback you get.
Well, we both got northern mothers, and neither of them minced their words, really.
No, exactly.
Okay. So then we just wanted to take the time to tell you a little bit about how the subscription service and how the YouTube sessions are going to change in the coming year. So I'm going to have to look a little bit down here to make sure I get everything off this list. So we've moved now towards being, of the 9 beers that you get, we're always going to guarantee you're going to get 6 fresh new beers every month, minimum. Sometimes it might even be more. But it's always going to be at least 6 of your 9 is going to be brand new beers released specifically for that box. Going on from that, we're going to make sure that from next year, every month has a collab beer in. There's going to be a brand new collab in every single box.
I love these because we have a meeting and we have an idea and it becomes set in stone, and Lee's now revealing it on YouTube.
You've seen it. You saw the script.
That's the intention is that, yes, we will always put a collab in every box, but it doesn't mean we could be able to do that. We haven't planned it out yet. Yeah.
Well, I'm a big believer in if you say you're going to do it, then you have to do it.
To be fair, normally Lee sends the scripts through for these at 5 p.m. and we're already here setting up and we don't read them.
And
today you said
these
it early.
through
I
at
just
2
didn't read it
o'clock.
because I was busy with something
I
else.
sent these through like about 6 hours ago. So
And
you've had
I'm so
plenty of
used
time
to this
read
now.
them.
We normally just wing it, and I don't read it until on the night, and I'm just looking down. It's like an auto cue.
And now you're panicking because you know what I'm about to say.
I didn't because
don't you?
our finance manager messaged me earlier, and he was like, "Lee said we're buying 2 canning lines in the script." I was like, "Yeah, I know."
Yeah. Well, I do like spending our money. So yeah, I'm still going on. Right, you're always going to get 6 new beers each time. We're always going to get a collab in there, and we are going
Just
to
read the next part. Just read the next bit.
And we're going to endeavour to ensure that we make this session a little bit different. And when we do our collabs going forward, we're going to try and make them occur on a Friday. So whoever we've collabed with that day then comes and joins us on this session.
So we're revealing what's happening next month. What we doing that?
So yeah, and that starts from next month, where we will have Matt from Lakes Brew Co joining us. And on the Thursday and Friday, we will have brewed 2 Tonka-based beers, because Matt was originally at Hawkshead, and Hawkshead did the first UK's Tonka-containing beer, and that was our inspiration.
Tonkspiration.
For Tonkspiration, as we say, for Tonkoko. So myself, Wayne, and Matt we've been talking for years and years about like getting together and doing something Tonka-based. And it's gone on that long that we decided, well, we might as well do
make
2
up
then.
for lost time.
So we're going to do I'm just going to have to say it. We're going to do an amaretto sour, because Tonka is known for having a very kind of almondy, marzipan-y type character. So we're going to take that and we're going to turn it into an amaretto sour. And the other one we're going to do is a Tonka maple and ginger stout.
So next time we won't start with the 9% dippers. We'll reveal all the upcoming surprises in the first hour.
I'm very much an open book, especially after a few beers. So even more excitingly, we are going to be taking this.
Before you say this next bit, have you told Polly this yet or not?
No.
Because I haven't told Sally this either. So go on.
It's coming out now.
Sorry, Polly. Hi, John. When did you sneak in? Yeah, so we're going to be taking this session international next year as well. So we have penciled in to do this in Norway, in New York, and in Yakima next year.
So we'll reveal a lot more details. If anyone really is interested in the New York one in particular, is going to be accessible, so you'll be able to join us on a short holiday in New York, a beer holiday. The Denmark one, we can share the dates of when we're going and what we're doing, but the New York one in particular is going to be an organised event, which we'll tell you a lot more about in one of our upcoming sessions.
We got any more of this one?
It's so good.
The Yakima one will be tied into when we do the annual hop harvest. So anytime there is an opportunity to do an international collaboration, we're going to try and take the show on the road and then let people know where we're going to be and what we're going to do to try and make it available for people to come and join us on tour.
Yay.
Can you reveal what breweries yet?
We cannot reveal what breweries yet, no. And I think the question I was just asked should be implicit in my response.
No, wait till the camera switches off, he'll tell you everything.
Yeah, it's just been suggested in the room that they just need to get me more beer, and that's regrettably probably true. So just to conclude, we're not quite there. You're also going to get all the usual subscriber exclusives, discounts, rewards. We're going to do a lot more of the trial recipe thing next year as well, where we do a beer, we want your feedback, you feedback to us, we decide if we then proceed with that on the grander scale at the big site. We're also going to look at, see, I'm giving us a get-out clause this time. We're also considering, that's about a word.
Consider we really want to do this, we just need to get the practicalities ready.
Yeah, we're thinking about doing a 3-can upgrade. So you could have a 12-can box as well. But we want to make those other 3 cans a little bit different, a little bit unique. So you're going to have to wait and see for the details on that one. So that wasn't so bad, was it?
Yeah, exactly. It's not about getting you up to 12 cans and having 6 filler cans. 100% not that. We hiccups. Sorry. We just need to find the practicalities of one, being able to segregate the orders and pick them. I can't even begin to explain how logistically challenged we already are trying to pick these orders. We have I'll tell you more about this probably another time. But it's fun and it's an interesting day, and Wattazell loves doing them. He just
I don't think fun's quite the word, is it?
He just generates mess. He just throws boxes everywhere. But yeah, we want to make sure that it works, and then we can get some really interesting extra options to get 12 beers in there, and make sure that they're all really interesting for you guys. We don't want to do what some breweries do, where you get 2 of every beer, unless you guys want that, and then feed that back to us. But sometimes people just want variety, so we don't want to just fill the boxes. So 12 can total, 3 can upgrade. We'll
And
hopefully
the final point, and hopefully this gets us a bit of a cheer, is we will still have the free audience participation, where you can come and join us, and we provide you beer. And cheers guys, that was really emphatic. Come on. Much better.
So one of the things we don't always point out, because we didn't think we needed to, but anyone watching at home who really wants to be part of this, you really should. Hopefully the guys in the audience will agree. It's free. You're gonna come and join us for 2 hours live, and you're gonna get free beer, and we're gonna talk to you. And afterwards, we usually
and you get to listen to us bramble on.
Oh,
yeah, come on.
Just don't come down to do a live one when we've got a 9% stout IPA to start on.
Well, that could go one or 2 ways. Let's see how the next hour or so goes.
And then when we do these, we took it on the road last year at festivals, and when we do them at festivals again, it's free beer, and you get a chance to do something a little bit different. So let us know if you want to take part in these, and we'll try and make more of them happen and make sure it's really interactive where we can. So yeah, so that's that.
Have you had any suggestions yet? It was like it was put out there, people to suggest doing a venue at people's houses.
So the question we've just been asked is, at a point in the past, we did say we would consider doing one of these in someone's house. I have a feeling somebody wants to propose their own house. Yes.
A bit like Field of Dreams. If they build it, they will. We are building it.
Okay.
It's waiting for plaster.
We've got competition.
We just need to bring the 4 beers and hook them up on keg, and then yeah.
Get them in before the carpets.
My inclination is to immediately say yes, but apparently I've overpromised a bit too much already tonight.
So we'll decide on that later.
I'm just looking in the back of the audience, and Polly's looking really nervous here because Lee's going to probably offer up his hot tub in his bar.
No. My bar, our bar, we can fit about, 8 people in it? Yeah, so that wouldn't work.
And then plus 4 in the hot tub, so 12 people for the next YouTube live.
Yeah.
Around the telly.
We'll be in the hot tub, and the 2 guests can get in and talk to us as well.
That is grim.
Hot tub brew machine.
Okay.
We've got room for 45 and a bathtub.
Brilliant.
Hello.
I'm loving this. We're up in the ante here. So I think all we can say right now is never say never. For me, I would like to. There we go. But we'll move on. We'll move on.
In the move on next.
Yeah. So on to some questions. Any plans to work with UK hop growers to produce a new hop that isn't Fuggles or EKG? And that's from Daniel Sawyer. Yeah, well, I can see why you wouldn't want to use those hops. Plans to work with a UK or any hop grower to produce a new hop. Hop growing is not dissimilar to the pharmaceutical industry. You're talking about 15 years between conception of idea and commercial growing. So
Unless it's a COVID vaccine.
So I'm kind of hoping Wayne and I have retired by the time that's actually going to be feasible. So I wouldn't see us working with one to conceive of a new hop. I would like to hope we would be invited to work with one to launch a new hop. I think that could be exciting.
I've got one here from Mark Armstrong. What's the 5-year plan for Brew York? Breweries, bars, question mark?
Yes and yes.
So we don't tend to try and project 5 years out. We're 6.5 years old now. So when we did our 5-year plan,
Oh, no, we're 5.5 years. Where'd the extra year come from?
COVID.
Right.
I feel that.
Our next birthday's 6th. We just planned this week for our 6th birthday.
9% beers. Yes. So we don't tend to plan out too far ahead, because when we set out to create Brew York, we did a business plan, we did a strategy, we did all the things you do, and we looked at where we'd like to be. And as we progressed and as things were going well for us, if we set these targets up, they tend to be inhibitors rather than helping us grow. We want to be, we want to look at opportunities and be reactive to them. We want to be able to look at what we're doing now, and if an opportunity comes up, like a new canning line, we will move on it quickly, and we won't sit around and think, well, that wasn't in our plan till the next year. So we try to keep things as flexible as possible, but we will be a little bit more strategic going forwards. But as much as possible, we like to react to stuff and try and grow and do things when they arise. One of the things we are looking at a lot more now is international markets. So export is a great tool, in Europe in particular, and in regions that are very close to us. We can get our beer out super fresh to those markets. Going further afield, like we export to Japan and Australia and countries like that, your beer goes on a shipping container for 6 weeks in a refrigerated shipping container. By the time it gets there, it's still fresh, but it's taken a long time and incurred a lot of cost. So we are intrigued at how we could do more internationally without adding that cost on to the beer. So I'm going to explore those options. And then, in terms of bars, COVID was a big inhibitor there as well. So there's no point buying a bar if you've got to open it, or you can't open it and do what you want from it. We did buy Leeds during COVID, and we feel that COVID kind of impacted on how successful that was at the time. But we are getting through that, and things are going really well there in Leeds. But we just want it to be to work. I don't know. Well, it wasn't COVID, to be fair, in Leeds. It was it was Leeds Council have put loads of roadworks up outside of our bar, and those roadworks are going down now. So it's given us a better opportunity to sell beer into Leeds market from a really cool location, and we want to do more of that. We just don't want to rush out while the potential that restrictions would come back in. So bars are definitely high on the
I'd say that the challenge we've had ever since the start is our product, what we do, has always been received well. We've had the opportunity to grow quickly, but we've only ever had a certain finite amount of money. So we've always had to choose between, are we going to grow the brewery, or are we going to expand the tap room, or are we going to get a bar? And of late, it's been about expanding the brewery. And we assumed in expanding the brewery that because we'd created this thing that could do 6 times the volume, we thought we would then gradually grow into that. And we just jumped up this clip first, and all of a sudden we're selling twice the beer instantly that we were selling last year. So we're now at a point where we're having to think about expanding the brewery yet again. So as much as we might like to consider other bars, as I've already said, there's only a finite amount of money. We can only do so much.
Yeah, thankfully we did future-proof as much as we could when we moved to the new site, in terms of we made the layout as efficient as we could, so we could add more tanks, we could increase capacity. But yeah, we're pleased. We're really pleased that we got to this stage so quickly. But yeah,
so it's definitely what you call first world problems, isn't it?
We need to put a few more tanks in, and we need to shuffle things around a little bit. So good problems to have. But yeah, they're high up on our list at the moment, and then we're going to look more at bars going into 2022.
and we took a hell of a long time on that one, so I can do this next one really quickly. Will the collabs be UK only or further afield? I think our international travel plans have probably answered that one.
So I think we need to go on to the next beer, don't we? That session 5% beer. Now on to the 9%ers again.
Well, while we're waiting on that coming in, have you heard of any collabs gone wrong with bad conflicts or results? And that's from Bob K. So I kind of wish I had, but no. There is a bit of a thing in our industry where whenever you collab with someone, you can have the smoothest running brewery in the world, and the second you invite a guest into your brewery, all of a sudden everything goes wrong. So we have done so many collabs where something's gone wrong, and I've gone to other breweries where they tell me the same thing. We don't understand why this is happening. This has never done this before, and something goes wrong. It just seems to be the nature of the collab. But has anything gone catastrophic to the point where the beer was bad or the beer didn't get released? Not in our experience. And I can't say I've heard of any stories from anyone else like that.
My interpretation of that question is slightly different to yours. So have you heard of any collabs gone wrong with bad conflicts or results? Well, Cloudwater did a few brews at Brewdog. And they weren't too pleased once the Brewdog got in the bad press about having that tie-in and having their name associated with Brewdog and having to then brew those beers.
Might not have been happy about it, but I believe those beers are still on sale in that supermarket.
And doing really,
not that disappointed.
doing really well.
Yeah.
But I think that might be a case of sometimes there might be a conflict, but it's not necessarily bad. It's just because that's what happened at the time. And thankfully, we've not had that experience. We did brew a beer when we talked about it last month for Brewdog's Collab Fest. That had the potential to cause a lot of upset for our customers, our followers. But it wasn't even about that. It was about the doing something with the local Brewdog bar, and we committed to it a long time ago, and we stuck to our commitment, and we put a statement out to explain why we did that and what we did. So hopefully you guys are familiar with where we got to on that. And we just keep getting flagged with the next beer sign. So I think
it's because I unprompted, I remembered to do the first one, but there you go. And we haven't even told people what this is. If you forget what you're drinking at any point in time because you're getting affected by the beer in the same way that we are, it's here. Right.
Try to one-eye it, like.
So the DIPA'rted, you again. See, always your name on these boards.
Who writes them?
No, I've really thrown Wayne off because we changed the sequence. It's because I started out with the first beer, you did the second one, so now I do the third, whereas it would ordinarily be the opposite.
Get talking.
It would be like Ant sitting on the opposite side, wouldn't it? It would be like you sat here.
I thought you meant Ant who's
No,
on
not
the
that
camera.
Ant, not Ant. As in Ant and Deck. Anyway, I think
Ant
we best move on from that quickly. So here we have the second beer of our Battle of the Dippers. So this time we've gone, right? This one wins. I had a feeling that might be the consensus. So we've had a big shout that says this one wins. We shall see. So this one is an East Coast dipper. So East Coast is the more modern interpretation of the beer. Can you guess which coast of America it comes from? South, yeah, south. West. So the East Coast interpretation is basically the antithesis of what the West Coast is. So it's opaque, it's not translucent. It is soft, it is not bitter. It is juicy, it is not resinous. So that's what this style is supposed to be. It's supposed to be incredibly easy drinking. And as per our question that we had earlier, this is the kind of beer where you ask, well, where the hell's the alcohol? How have they hidden that volume of alcohol in this kind of beer? Yeah.
It's just so easy drinking, and I am 100% a West Coast person, or West Coast. But I've got to admit, this is really good.
Really
and,
good.
and honestly, I guess it depends on how you start, what you drink preceding this. Because I came into the tasting, and the only beer I've been drinking was a East Coast style beer, and I feel like I'm on Team East Coast tonight, and which is completely against what I normally drink. I genuinely don't drink East Coast beers very often, but I'm really enjoying this. I love. Imperial Eagle, but sorry, Lee.
The Eagle's coming.
Okay, we'll talk about this later. Yeah, and this has been made with what we call no-fail hops. It's been made with what we call the Holy Triumvirate, Citra, Mosaic, Simcoe. They are the most amazing hops. You can almost not fail with these things. If you're putting them in your beer, it's going to be a good beer.
No, you can. I've seen breweries like they just splash a bit of hops in there.
Right, if you use them in decent enough quantity, you can't fail with these hops. And this was a recipe conceived by a guy called Roddy. Roddy was with us, I think, the best part of 4.5 years. Unfortunately, he has now departed for fucking Heineken. Sorry, it's not easy for me to say that, but yeah, he's gone to Heineken. So sorry, Heineken. Sorry, Roddy, if you happen to watch this. I'm not apologising to Heineken. I don't give a damn about you. But yeah, so sorry, Roddy, if you do happen to hear this. But yeah, I did hear the other day that he did 8 mashes in one day, and each of them was 750 hectolitres. So put it this way, our new site is a 50 hectolitre, 5,000 litre brewery. So he did 75,000 hectolitres 8 times during his one shift.
Wow.
And that's gonna that's something like John Smith. It's like,
Yeah, I know.
doesn't it break your heart to think that there are people out there drinking that kind of crap in that quantity?
So Roddy's came and joined us as our drayman originally. He joined the business because we had a vacancy in the dray, and he basically kept progressing, kept getting promotions. Within about 2 years from drayman, he was our production manager. So he rocketed through. He was really, really, really good at what he did, and it was a shame to lose him, especially to Heineken. But hopefully, this is a good.
But this was his
parting
departing gift to us. So that's why it's called The Departed. And the branding on the can is like The Departed. You've got Jack Nicholson there, and there is Roddy. This is Roddy. And I think our artists have done a very good likeness of Roddy. That looks exactly like it.
There's the guy from the police officer from YMCA's on there as well. The Village People. I don't know.
Oh,
why,
yeah.
but,
And when we saw the original artwork for this, apparently there's a big running thing in the Martin
film.
Scorsese's The Departed, where there's X's that keep appearing. It's supposed to signify like who you're supposed to be looking at, that kind of thing. So the original artwork had an X on Roddy's chest. We thought, well, ex-employee, that's a little bit. Yeah, I don't think we can do that. So we got the X removed from his chest, and he's got his green Heineken green T-shirt on now.
Should have been a Heineken logo.
He's gonna fucking kill me.
But no, I think it's a fitting tribute to someone who did so much for us. He was a really good guy to have working for us, and it's a shame he moved on. But hopefully you guys, and hopefully Roddy himself, really enjoys the beer that he makes
We've sent him a case, and I'm sure he'll really appreciate it given what he has to drink now. So one of the major changes Roddy made with this was to use not only our standard kind of pale malt in it, but to also use a lot of Pilsner malt. And Pilsner malt is a little bit less refined than the pale malt, so that contributes to this hazy character, and it contributes to what Wayne was describing earlier in terms of that residual sweetness. Some of the sugars in there are not as fermentable as it would be in a standard pale, so you get that slightly sweeter level that suits this kind of style. So have I won again?
Hour and 10 in.
He's just happy
if you are new to us, you will understand that we have this thing going on called the sweepstake, and I think the people who conceived that are in the room. Yes. So if you are part of our online community, you would usually be betting on which of us is going to go to the loo first. If you ever bet on me going to the loo first, you generally lose. Yeah. So learn that for next time. And then I'm going to rig this, and I'm going to bet on. And then first 5 minutes, I'm going to be out the door. So other questions. So Derek Reethans, regular contributor. Who peels the apples? Thankfully not me. Right, next. Any more special beers like the Survivor series or the Horror series? Bill at the back. So Bill, hello Bill.
I did it on YouTube because I'm too lazy.
You did on YouTube. So you're there, but you put it as a comment underneath the video.
I wouldn't say that's lazy, mate. I'd say you've gone above and beyond.
I felt I was too
Right.
far back.
So you're like the Chinese tourist. You're in the room, but not in the room because you're also watching through the screen.
3 hours
Right.
to get it.
All right.
Schrodinger's audience goes.
So any more special beers? Right. So what we have decided, and I'm not going to tell you all the details. I've let too much out of the bag today. Is we are going to do one big project every quarter next year. 2 of them are a given. We are going to have our 6th birthday in April next year. So we're going to do a lot around that. We're going to release 6 beers for 6 years. I cannot tell you any more about that because I'll get chopped.
What's your reveal while I've been gone?
But I haven't really revealed anything. I haven't revealed anything. So each quarter next year, we're going to do a big thing, a big project. So quarter 2, April, will be our birthday beers. That's a given. And then we always do our thing at Christmas, the 4 different beers that come at Christmas. So that means we've 2 gaps to fill. We've got to do something in the early part of the year, and we've got to do something in the sort of autumn. And then, if you want to know what they are, come and find me for a beer afterwards, because I'm not announcing on camera. Yeah. Like I said, I've said too much
Aren't you
already.
supposed to be talking about the Departed? Does he digress?
We did that, but
I left the room and everyone's like, secrets, Lee, quick, secrets!
no, you did your usual early departure to the toilet, so I ducked into the questions. Departure to oh yeah. So we did that.
Was that not why you said it? I thought,
No, I'm not that clever.
So the next topic is about the subs boxes, so drinking outside the box. So what have we got coming up next month? So we've got a obviously.
18 beers.
So we 10 barrel aged beers. So we're gonna.
9% is the key.
Right. So no. Seriously, what have we got coming?
Well, we
out
had
next month?
we feel that this box is a really strong box, and we always say that every month. We're going to say that, but we genuinely do believe this. When we sit down and curate, decide what's going to go in, we're always like, what can we do to make it better than the last one? So this was a really cool box. So what we're going to do next month? So we've got. Has anyone had one tonight? We've got a new 5% hazy pale ale coming in. It's called Schooner Matata. So we actually got it's on the front of Ant's laptop box. It's one of our favourite artworks of the year, and it falls closely on the back of getting a letter from the Portman Group, which we got recently.
Yeah.
So
Here we are. And another reason we may get sued. There we go.
It's no worries, mate.
No worries.
So the Portman Group issued us a naughty boy letter recently about a beer we did called Nougat Friend and Me, and it was and well the reason it became to their attention is because it was actually in Sainsbury's. So if you sell a beer into a supermarket, you fall into Portman Group's remit where they'll potentially go after you. We didn't think too much of it when we first made the beer because it was a very short run one-off beer intended for 3 months in Sainsbury's. What we didn't realise is we did it through Beerhawk, sorry, yeah, I was going to say Beer 52, it wasn't. So Beerhawk, and they messed up their ordering with us in a good way for us, in that they ordered more than twice the volume they were supposed to. So our 3-month listing, that they actually ordered more than 6 months worth of beer. So it was like, oh well, we've sold the beer, great. But in reality, what that meant was that this beer that we weren't too worried about because we knew the branding was borderline, was in the public eye a little bit longer than we anticipated. So we held our hand up. The Portman Group sent us a letter and said, you've got a Toy Story themed beer. We thought we might get the letter from Disney, but unfortunately it was Portman Group. Your beer basically appeals to kids because it's based on a kids film.
Yeah, and I mean, everybody knows that kids love 6.6% pastry stouts. Yeah,
but we kind of had to hold the hand up a little bit and say, well, yeah, I guess it kind of does because it's got a Toy Story theme. So thankfully, one of the things they ask you to do is basically not. Yeah, well, yeah. But they
Have we
basically
learned from that?
they say don't sell the beer, and so you need to withdraw the beer. You need to stop selling the beer with that branding. Not a problem. We haven't sold that beer for 4 months. We literally brewed a batch of it just for this contract, and we haven't sold it. So the customer who bought it off us can continue selling it indefinitely. We can't sell it anymore, which is fine because we're not going to. So that was our response. Don't worry. We will comply, and we won't brew a beer again under that name. And then, literally today, I'd genuinely completely forgotten about this beer. And then today, when we canned it, and I was like, I do love the branding, I love the beer, but God, we don't have. We do this to ourselves, don't we? It's,
No, they can only go after you for supermarket beers.
Oh,
This
well,
is a
this is
one-off
supermarket.
release.
Well, you see, it's a one-off release.
And I
It's
keep,
really good.
I've been sitting there thinking I need to bite my fist when it comes to the Portman Group, but I'm finding it really hard to.
Well, give a bit of an overview of how the Portman Group came about.
Right, so the Portman Group is a kind of independent organisation, independent my arse, as in funded by Big Beer, funded by macro brewers to police our industry. Yeah, if you look at their history, they never go after any of the big brewers. They only go after the craft brewers. So it's entirely funded by the big boys, and all of their targets are the small boys. What are we to interpret from that?
Yeah, it's basically self-appointed regulators of our industry who are basically owned by the major breweries, and
And do you know all it takes? It just takes one person, one complaint, and they can have you ripped out of a supermarket. One thing. That's it.
Yeah, so that is the condition. So they can't complain about, well, they can. You can complain about a beer in an independent bottle shop, but you don't have to comply with the Portman Group. But if it goes into a multinational, well, a national retailer, that's when they really have their power.
I'm off to Lou. Spare questions here if you need them.
So one of the interesting ones I read about yesterday was a brewery who's not in the craft scene's favour anyway at the moment is a brewery called Mikkeller from Denmark. So Mikkeller have actually just lost the case which the Portman Group put against them because they've got a beer in the supermarket called Side-Eye Pale Ale. And the argument was, it looks like Minecraft characters. I was like, Mikkeller have used those characters since day one. Nothing to do with Minecraft, but they've put that beer into a supermarket, and if you look at their can, it just basically, it says side-eye, and there's those two characters. Yeah, if you turn it around and you read the detail, it says pale ale, 5%. That's not good enough on a supermarket shelf, unfortunately. So, and even in the alcohol aisle, it's just not good enough. So bit of a joke, but at the same time, we've got to consider that if we ever want to sell a beer into a supermarket, you've got to consider those things. Yeah, and one of the don't get me wrong, I think I still love this beer, and I love the branding we did on it. We took our existing characters because we do a lot of animal characters, and then we put it into something which I think looks really cool, and then we used a bit of a pun, obviously, on the Schooner Matata. And I wouldn't have really considered this or worried about it at all if it hadn't been for what happened recently. But what's annoying me now is I'm talking about beer that no one's even tried yet, apart from any of our brewers, and it's a really cool beer. And I don't want to be in a position where we feel we can't make this into a permanent feature for Brew York because we're worried that the Portman Group will go after us. Definitely not worried Disney would go after us. Why would they? So, but yeah, it's frustrating when you do something that you really appreciate, and the guys at United by Design used our existing branding assets, and I think they did something really cool. But we've got to be obviously very careful of it now because, well, we make alcohol. We sell our product amongst other alcohol products. It says it's a beer on the front of it. It says the strength of it. But we've got to be considerate that we don't put photos on our cans. We use characters, and characters can be interpreted as cartoons. So yeah, I guess technically that is a cartoon, and it with animals, and it possibly appeals to kids. But how far do you go into that?
I was explaining this to. So I'm good friends with Steve and Martin, who do the UK's best.
Steve Martin,
No, Steve and Martin. They do the Opinions podcast. So it's the UK's longest established and most renowned podcast. And I was chatting with them about this a little while ago, And they said, well, what are they going to do about all the beers that feature Santa this time of year then? Because Santa is a thing that's very associated with kids. So if kids are going to see Santa and think, well, that's for me, does that mean that no beer in this world can now have Santa on it? Because if that isn't the case, then this is the case of very, very double standards. Can't trademark it. Oh. Anyway, we're moving on from this.
So we'll move on. We've got one from Tom in the audience. So Tom's asked, can we explain the difference between cans and bottles? Belgian in bottles, UK in cans. Sorry?
Glass and metal. Glass and aluminium.
Glass and
Different. Yeah, that's right. The obvious answer would be glass and metal. Yeah. No. So historically, you've seen things packaged in glass, and that was a convenience thing before they could do what they could do with aluminium or steel or whatever these days. But really, if you're going for quality with your product, the can is the better thing. But we have to concede that the bottle is the more marketable thing. If you are a collector of beers, as I am, glass is still king.
I see you waited for Polly to walk out the room, his wife, when he talks about collector of beers.
Well, while she's out the room, I can say, well, she doesn't know about the cellar of beers I've got through there.
Well, when she wants
There is a reason I keep them here. But no, if we go into the detail of it, there's a thing that can happen to beer if it interacts with light. It becomes what we call light struck. And the light can interact with the hop compounds in the beer and it will transform the flavour. This is great because we're going for Heineken again. Heineken, a very big part of its flavour is because it is in green glass. And the light interacts with these hop compounds in there and it transforms the flavour. And the flavour of Heineken is the textbook flavour of a light struck beer. So that's... So ordinarily, light is a bad thing. Clear glass, 100% light penetration, that's going to happen every time. Green glass, you're talking about, 95% penetration, so you're going to get that interaction. But brown glass, you're still getting like 98% penetration. You're still getting some light through. You're still going to get that impact. Cans are, of course, entirely opaque. You're not going to get that light penetration. It's not going to interact with whatever you've got in there in the same way. Another big drawback of bottles is that you have this thing on top, and they call it a crown cap. And that seal is not a perfect seal. So over time, air's going to get in or something's going to come out. And air and beer, air and alcohol is a bad thing. That combination leads to this thing called vinegar. As a beer oxidizes, it turns into vinegar. So that crown cap is not a good thing. Whereas this seal here is a perfect seal. So once you've got your product in there, there's no air ingress. And then there's other massive benefits. So more recyclable, you've got top to tail branding, easier to transport, lighter weight. So that's why the entire market has now gone towards can as opposed to bottles.
So as someone in the audience said you don't need a bottle opener. It's a really funny one because when we started the brewery, branded bottle openers are really cool and they're great to give out. And we had a load of them and we were just like, well, we don't actually do bottles anymore. So, but they had a little tiny nip on them that then you basically use them to open your cans if you don't have nails. So, these are awesome. It's a really funny thing. But the other I was.
Need one. We'll all take one.
They're all gone. I'm sorry.
So we had a chat with our friend Andy, who has a brewery called Elusive, which is an awesome brewery in Redden. If you've not tried their beers, go and try them.
Well done on getting the location correct.
Yeah, they're brilliant. And Andy used to do a lot of bottles until I think during lockdown, midway through lockdown, he started doing cans. I'm probably wrong on the dates there, but he was brewing a beer with us, and we were talking about it afterwards. And he's like, I've just got a message from a courier that a whole pallet of Oregon Trail, which is an awesome beer, had fallen over. And I just said to him, thank God you're not doing bottles anymore. He's like, what do you mean? I was like, well, obviously, if that pallet of bottles would have fallen, that whole thing's gone. And he's like, but my pallet of cans have fallen, so I've lost them. I was like, you haven't. Obviously, they're going to be damaged, but would you guys pay for beer still? You know, if we give you a discount because it's got a damaged can,
Yeah, if you
still
got
buy
it
wouldn't you?
50% off just because it's dented, you'd go for
You've
that.
still got a usable product, and don't get me wrong. If we're putting out a barrel-aged 10% Imperial Stout in fancy branding, we want it to be a perfect-looking can when it gets to you. But if you're buying a core IPA, and we can sell it to you, you're buying the content, not the packaging. And if we can sell it to you and you get the same quality content, and we can give you a discount because the packaging's been dented because it's fallen off a pallet, then it's great, isn't it? We haven't lost that beer, and I just think it's a really good advantage that we always overlook because, thankfully, touch wood, it doesn't happen very often. The pallets don't fall over, but it does happen.
I kind of feel like that's going to happen next week now. You
Yeah,
said
I
that.
know. I touched wood, so it shouldn't.
Next question I've got is, any plans on doing a perfect draft machine? From Matthew Barker. Well, I think that's one of your favourite subjects, so
Yeah.
do you want to take that one?
So Perfect Draft is actually a multinational brewery-owned product. It's owned by, not AB InBev, who is it?
Hopefully nobody associated with Heineken.
So Beerhawk are owned. Who are Beerhawk owned by?
AB InBev.
Okay, it is an AB InBev product then.
Yeah.
So Beerhawk are owned by AB InBev. AB InBev own the rights for the Perfect Draft machine. I don't know what it's called. There's only 4 breweries in the UK who currently supply that product, and that's Tiny Rebel, Thornbridge, Magic Rock, and I won't remember the 4th now that I've said that. So you can get craft beer in that Perfect Draft format, but their factories, and they only have one in somewhere like Belgium, is already at capacity. They cannot get any more throughput through. And we've been talking to the guys at Beerhawk for ages because we really want to put our product into this, because I want you guys to be able to sit at home and drink from the Perfect Draft machine or whatever the machine is and drink our beer on draft at home. It'd be really cool. And we can't afford the infrastructure to build something to be able to do that. So it'd be great to work with a company like that who already does it. And then we went to a few different festivals, talked to a few different people, and we realised the volume of beer that some of these breweries are putting into Perfect Draft is just crazy. And it's not the volume that we're interested in it for. We just want our customers to be able to drink it at home. But we're working as hard as we can. But they're at capacity. They're hopefully building. Well, they are in the middle of building a packaging facility in the UK. Once that facility is open, we'll hopefully be able to put our products through their facility to package it, and then hopefully you guys, well, hopefully they'll agree to buy it off us to be able to do that. But we'll see. We are working on it, but it's going to be probably a year away, even if things go well.
Okay, next one. In your annual meetings, can you plan for some Oktoberfest beers? And that's from Stephen Guy. So Oktoberfest beers, so they're generally of a lager type style, and for reasons we discussed earlier, it's difficult for us to do lagers. It's a thing, I think, as I said, we need to be tentative about. And it's always difficult doing something like that where it's specifically time bar. The big beer of the Oktoberfest is a Marsan. So, and they take a long time to produce, and then you've got this very small window in which to sell them. So it's kind of a high-risk product. So the volume, I like minimum production volume now. It wouldn't make a great deal of sense for us.
We've got a few ideas though. What we potentially could do with enough time, because one of the things I don't think we mentioned earlier is the reason they're called lagers is lager means storage or store. So you basically you lager the beer, you store the beer for a long time to get the right quality product out there. So you're talking 2 months.
Unless you're a big macro brewer and you just get loads of filters.
So you lager your beer for 2 months. So if we brewed it in July, Oktoberfest weirdly is actually September. So we brew it in July and it might be ready for September. So maybe we could, I don't know, maybe we'll brew some small batches here and we'd lager them, and then we'd have tank beer, well, in a tank, and then we'd maybe do something smaller pack. But it's volume. And most of our customers who come in to visit us in our taproom or beer hall don't come to drink lager. So convincing you all to come and just drink lager is going to be quite difficult. And yeah, so it's just, I don't know, it's one of those things where it doesn't quite work for us as a brewery, but we would love to do more of it.
Yeah.
Top 5 sellers.
It's
So we've got a question from Joe in the audience. Is it in our top 5 sellers? Our number 1 selling product in the taproom and beer hall is our lager, but that's because we have one. So
one.
if we had 5 lagers, the sales would split between 5 lines,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden, we're still going to have maybe sell. It's not 100 pints a week, but if it was 100 pints a week, we still sell 100 pints and just split over 5 products instead of one. So
I mean, probably the biggest grossing beer event in York in the last year was somebody did do an Oktoberfest, and they did it at the racecourse in York, and they had 4 beers, and that just doesn't compute for me. So I'm going to a beer festival, and I have a selection of 4 beers to pick from.
Did that, but there's only 300 people at Lisbon.
I mean, they sold out. They had to add extra sessions. It was hugely popular. But I guess that is not our demographic. That's not our customer.
yeah. Well, we've looked at it. We toyed with the ideas previously, but it's just not the style of beer we make, and it's not that we could get a festival full of people and then unfortunately disappoint them because we've got flavourful beers.
Well, we would rather that we attracted people to come here and enjoy beer for the quality of the beer and the diversity of the beer than the sheer consumption quantity, which is what those kind of events are about.
Which is one thing we haven't actually mentioned, because one of the things we haven't done because of COVID and because of coming out of COVID is have any festivals or events in our own venues.
Have you read my next question?
Well, there we go. I'm preempting it. So next year is the return to Brew York events at York, in York, which we haven't done, which is going to be amazing. And
so, a question from Ian here: plans for the 6th birthday?
Well, yeah,
so
a very big festival.
We don't have the final details. All we can say is our birthday is 9th of April next year. So whatever the most logical date is around that, a Saturday, we will be doing, for the first time ever, a big festival up at our new production facility in Osborne.
Pretty cool.
Are we having a party?
Yeah. So
we're inviting Jamie Vardy. Yeah.
WKD's all round. Brew KD's.
Saturday.
So you can probably tell that we are that disorganised about this that I can't even tell you the dates. I just know it's going to be the Saturday near the 9th of April.
It will be more than just a Saturday. It'll at least be the Friday, Saturday. At least the Friday, Saturday. And at which point, while Lee talks about the next question.
As if you're going again. You know what you've done there, though? That now means I can make loads of promises about this birthday
Party, and are we all invited?
We've all got accessible areas.
So,
We all stayed indoors.
I mean, what we will always do at our big parties is we will invite other brewers. We will make sure that we've got all the latest unique beers there. The 6 beers that we're doing, many of them are going to be international collabs. All of them will be available. I can't say much more than that. Ant, have you got any more questions for me, sir? We have a question in the room. You can, right, so I've been asked, can you lager any beer? So lager is a German word. Lager means, as Wayne has just said, to store. So you can lager any beer. Any beer that you have sat in your fridge, sat in your cellar, technically you are lagering. That's what that means. Over time, they then adopted the word to refer to a particular style of beer. In its most traditional form, to lager means to store for 3 months. You've got to store it for 3 months. A proper lager is stored for 3 months. A decent German beer, a Czech Pilsner, that kind of thing, is going to have been stored for 3 months. But what we now know as lager, with your Carling and your Heinekens and all that, the things we refer to as cooking lagers, you'd be lucky if they've been like 2 weeks from brew house to glass. So are they lagered?
No, they're pit.
Yeah, exactly. Well, they're piss. Yes, yeah. I'm just quoting someone off camera.
I'll be off to his house.
Whoa!
How much did he reveal?
I don't. We just decided to slate macro beer again. So it's fine.
Well, I was walking past the bar and there was a couple ahead of me.
I don't know about, so I've just been asked, can you do the lower fermentation to a stout? Stout I'm unfamiliar with. There is a thing called a Baltic porter, however, which is you basically take the recipe of a porter and you ferment it with a lager yeast. And then because you've cold done it, you have to take that longer sort of 6 to 8 week, whatever period to do it. It's not a thing I've done, it's a thing I've looked into, it's a thing I want to do because obviously I love dark beers. And I would like to see what a dark beer turns out like when you do it with...
that whole thing that you said earlier about let's get ahead of the Americans and do things that they haven't rather following.
Yeah.
Maybe that is something you could do.
So I'm going to have to keep re-quoting you for the camera. So a thing it has been suggested, that we could do cold fermented stouts, porters as a way of getting ahead of the Americans. That could be one of our innovation things. I would love to think that could be the case, but unfortunately that has been done before. It is the Baltic porter, as I say. It's a style I love. Colonel do the odd one, but they're really good. Yeah.
So sorry to do the ant because Ant's not done it, but we need to move on. We need to go to the next beer because
You're slacking, Ant. You're slacking.
Yeah, we're
in fact, he's just permanently got it displayed because he knows what we're like.
we're about 10 minutes behind our normal time. So yeah, on to the fourth and final beer. So we've got Pumpkin Imperial. So this is a collaboration beer we brewed with Sonnet 43. Oh, sorry, S43. They used to be called Sonnet 43. They rebranded to S43 about a year ago, I think, maybe a little bit more than that. And this is a beer that Lee and Lilith, our
assistant brewer,
went down across to.
Durham. You're doing well here, man.
They went across to Durham to brew the beer.
I'm supposed to be the one with bad geography.
I'm supposed to be the one who didn't go. This is why I'm asking you. So those guys went across and brewed this beer, which, as we mentioned earlier, is like a follow-up to what we brewed last year, a more amplified. I don't think it's double. I think the last version was 7%. It was definitely strong.
Yeah, I don't think maybe high 60s, but around that point, yeah.
So
I may have exaggerated when I said double.
Double, yeah. But it's been amped up to 9.5%. So 9.5% is a pretty strong pumpkin beer. But it's really cool. It's something we talked about previously, and before we did the S43 collab last year, we weren't sure if we'd ever brew a pumpkin beer. And we still haven't brewed a pumpkin beer at our place, but we love this beer. We went across and we brewed the beer last year, and we're like, we want to hopefully prove it's a misconception that pumpkin beer is bad. And we think that the guys at S43 did a great job, and obviously we did some input to it, but we're not going to claim ownership of it. It's their beer that we had influence into, it's great. We love it. It's such a cool beer.
There are big things. So, shoot. The brewer at
shoot. That was for your benefit, Paul.
Polly's the room. Well, yeah, you're welcome. So the brewer at S43 is called Alex. He's American, and pumpkin beers are a big thing in the US. And like our friend Travis, that comes over every year until the pandemic. He comes over every year, and he insists on bringing these pumpkin stouts. And we're like, what the hell have you brought these for? It's clearly going to be awful. And then he gave us one or two of them. We're like, all right, we're converted. We're converted.
We've literally just said the same thing. Non-stout fans, I'd say it's converted.
Yeah, they brought this thing over called the Pumpkinator.
Yeah.
I mean, for a start, it's an epic name. And it was an amazing beer. And then ever since then, I've been convinced on pumpkin.
You can't go on names though. When Travis, our friend, brings beers back, he brought.
Oh my God!
Pickle fucker, was it?
It was called Pickle Fucker, yeah.
Pickle fucker. And I was like, what the hell?
No, it was a sour beer
horrible.
Made with like gherkin juice, and it was called.
Pickleback. It was basically. Yeah.
It was like a pickleback as a sour, and it was called Pickle Fucker.
Well, I need this in my life.
Honestly, it's such a strange beer.
It was awful.
It was definitely what you call a Marmite beer. It was the type of beer that Northern Monk could bring out on April Fools, but it would be a beer. So a little bit of a distraction. So yeah, pumpkin. Travis, our American friend, started converting us, and when we found an American friend in the industry who wanted to brew a pumpkin beer with us, at their risk. I'm sorry, but that's true. At another brewery, so then that brewery has to sell the beer. Whereas we were always worried if we brewed a divisive. Well, we haven't been that worried about brewing divisive beers, but if you brewed a beer that we weren't 100% confident in, it's better to go and learn from another brewery. So we did that, and we think that they brewed an awesome beer. And when they said about doing this one this year and amplifying it, it was a no-brainer. Is that you're not going to make that beer any worse by taking it from 7 up to 9 or 9.5. So yeah, it was great. We just can't believe they still haven't been sued by Starbucks.
No.
Yeah.
Or the Star Wars franchise last year.
Well,
I think this is why we as breweries get on, because we really both walk the line, don't we?
So S43 did a Snickers beer, and it was, what was it called? But it was obviously Snickers. They got a cease and desist.
What was the phrase he said when he was at beer when he was in the tank and he said the phrase?
Oh.
No, not there.
No, I know what you mean. It's like, yeah.
Because that's what they call it, about a thirst or a hunger, or what was it?
Hungry fool? I don't know. Anyway, we digress.
Right, well, I'm going to have to Google this one later.
So
that's going to bug the hell out of me. Right.
So it is a pumpkin beer, but one of the things that makes this beer work really well for me is that it's got a lot of coffee in it. So it is actually a cold brew coffee beer. It's coffee and hence the Starbucks theme. It's based on their, I've never actually tried it, but their pumpkin latte, which is obviously a coffee, milk and pumpkin beer. Or not beer, well theirs isn't a beer, but ours is. But no, I think it works really well as a beer.
And we probably should give a shout out for their local roasterers. Well, what the hell is the term? Rotisserie. That's what you put chickens on.
That's what chicken is.
Well, we already named a beer after them, didn't we? Flat Pack Fika Fuel.
Well, that's right. So yeah, so they're called local roasters.
Roasters. I think you just call it roasters. So.
I don't know what the term is.
Anyway,
they're called Fika.
And Fika
and they're up in like Flat Pack Fika,
yeah,
which is yes.
Fika is actually Swedish for coffee.
I don't know if it's exclusively Swedish. It's definitely Scandinavian. Fika is what they call coffee out in the Scandiland.
The Scandiland.
I'm improvising.
So let's move on to the upcoming beery highlights before we fumble anymore.
No more 9% on the next one, no.
Don't do 9%.
And no. Final fact on this beer is: have any of you tried to get pumpkin in this country any time other than 2 weeks leading up to the 31st of October?
Hell no.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It is literally an impossible task. The only time we have them in this country is that 2 week period leading up to then. So we ended up having to get this tin pumpkin imported from the US to be able to do this beer.
Of course Alex was on that.
Yeah.
I'll ship it over.
But it's ridiculous, isn't it? Like, literally, the only appetite in the UK is to sculpt these things in that 2 week period up until the 31st. Oh, we don't even need them. Sorry?
We grow them, and that's when the process is.
Apparently, Joe and Michael grow them. Do you grow enough for a beer? Because we will take next year's allowance.
Can you expand if not?
One of the
Got a bit of land near the brewery.
one of the biggest pumpkin farmers is actually up the road. I'm pretty sure it's towards Malton, and they started with about, anyway. They've got a lot of pumpkins. So I can't believe we're wasting time on talking about this, but yeah. Yeah, exactly.
As dull as that is, I actually want to hear what you were going to say.
I read a story that they started with, I don't know, something like free pumpkins. They started with about 20 pumpkin plants, and then like now they have some like 10,000. It's so ridiculous.
I've changed my mind. I'm sorry I asked.
Yeah, exactly. I cut it short for a reason, but yeah. So let's go on to our upcoming beery highlights before we bore you all to death.
Right. So in another feature change, we are going to have upcoming beery highlights. So this is Wayne and I looking forward to what we are excited about that's coming up. Given that we've just done our annual planning, we are going to give you one beer that we're excited about each that's coming up next month. And then we're going to give you one beer that we're excited about the return of it next year. And we're going to give you one beer that we're excited about it being a new thing that we're going to do next year. And given you forgot to write yours down, this is going to be really hard.
I forget to write it down. I'm just like, how am I going to blag this one?
So I'll start off with.
Just repeat the same bit.
Yeah.
So
Just barrel age whatever he says.
Yeah.
Thank you. I've got mine. Yeah, I know what I've got coming up.
Yeah.
But the beer I'm excited about in the upcoming period is our new head brewer, Tom, is going to do a beer that's going to be called, well, not called, it's going to be a peach iced tea sour.
I've got that.
Why is it special?
What?
No lactose in it.
And it's not going to have lactose in, yes. And I just think it's a unique combination of flavours that could work so well, and I look forward to seeing what he's going to do with that.
Has anyone done iced tea dead people?
Yeah. No, please don't call it that.
Has anyone done it? Has anyone done it?
I think they have.
Oh,
I think they
Oh
have.
my God, that's the
But
best
if they haven't, we're trademarking that instantly.
So my favourite, well, my most look forward to upcoming beer that I wasn't prompted to by the audience is our barrel-aged espresso Patronum. So, so our Amundsen collab, which we did way over a year, about 18 months ago, is actually going back into tank from barrel into tank, ready for packaging in about 2 weeks' time. So really quick. So it's going to be available in time for Christmas.
Did you announce the 4 beers for the next thing?
No.
They're next.
Is that when I went to the loo, or did we like just totally skip a section?
Oh yeah, I might miss my prompts. I mentioned one beer and then we digressed.
Right. Well, there are 4 beers that are going to form part of the next YouTube, and the pinnacle of that is going to be the barrel-aged espresso
yeah,
Patronum.
exactly. So I mentioned Schooner Matata, and then I got digressed by trademark infringement because you went to the toilet.
Okay. Right. Okay. But
So there's 2 beers. There's 2 other beers we missed.
before we complete the things we're excited about going forward, let's just tell you about the box, the YouTube
Well,
next
I'm
time.
really excited about a beer we've got coming up, which is a Fine Ales collab.
The release the Kranaken. Yeah. So we're going to do the YouTube 4 next time are going to be Schooner Matata 5% APA. We're then going to follow that up with release the Kranaken, which is a
We're
nice.
not necessarily doing these in this order. So 5% followed by a
I think it's all right.
10%. But
It's
yeah,
decided. It's
9%.
9%. Yeah.
Kranaken milk stout. So we're talking oatmeal, raspberry, whiskey. Yeah, it's
Stout.
honestly,
It's really cool.
We are so.
We've got to stop drinking it from
We've
the
already
tank.
packaged this beer. We are so happy with this beer.
And it's 9%, so it suits starting a YouTube tasting with it.
An easy session, yeah. Easy drinking 9. It's an easy drinking 9.
That's not the lead beer.
And then we're going to follow that up with Twisted Transistor, which is a re-release of a previous sour IPA. So 7.1%, where you've got your usual big hoppy character, but a nice level of acidity. And with that acidity, you get this big bump of juice. It's really cool. And then we're going to
feature
finish
beer.
it off with
The barrel-aged espresso. So not necessarily this order, but it is that order. So we are going for second beer as a 9%er, and then we're going to dip back to a 7% to cleanse the palate, and then we're going to finish on the 12% Imperial barrel-aged stout. But at least we start with a 5% next time instead of like doing it in between. So it's just going to be, it's going to even worse.
Book my ticket now.
So if you add the units up, I think next month's is actually stronger than this month's.
Yeah, I think we're basically doing a monthly recommended allowance in one evening.
One of the things though we have been talking about recently, and our new canon line will give us the flexibility to do this, is we think that next year our State of Mind series will move down to a free 30ml can. You will be able to, obviously, in doing so, it means that you'll be able to buy more of them to share them, but everyone's booing, so ignore that. That was we're making them into 1 litre sharing bottles.
I believe they call that feedback in the moment.
Growlers!
There you go. Feedback right in the moment. But we have to be honest with ourselves, guys. There are ways in which we aspire to drink, and there are ways in which we actually drink. And I have many of these big hitting stouts, and they're in 440s, 500s, some of them in big bottles.
Don't open them.
You get to the end of the night and you go, yeah, I think I can do this. I think I can do this. And then you crack it open, and then you wake up the morning after and you're like, God, I paid so much money for that. And I've
There's
drunk
half
like
of
a
it left
third
in
of
the
it.
can. Yeah.
Some don't turn up next day. We're like, oops.
So I think you will consume these things, you will enjoy them more if we put them in slightly more palatable formats. So that's our thinking with that one.
It's not a done decision. We'll put some more feelers out to the general public, you guys in particular, subscribers more than the general public. Our subscribers in particular is who we want to please more than anyone else.
We just had a shout from the back that said, "Don't trust the general public." If there's anything we've learned,
General public shouted that.
no, if there's anything that we've learned in the last 20 odd months of a pandemic,